Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Bear Guys and 2T Fitness. The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language, and I will not go to my room. Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is the current edition. Today, we are talking Candyman 2, Farewell to the Flesh. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man trying to hook me, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hello, Tom.
Country Club pissant. One of the things I respect about this movie is that it makes class distinctions between different groups of Caucasians.
Yeah.
It's got that. I guess that's the advantage of being directed by a white guy, is that, those white people totally hate those other white people.
Yeah, right.
We got to write that in somewhere.
Yeah, there's different levels of white people.
It's the opposite of Chris Rock's routine about Louis Farrakhan and his anti-Semitism. It's like, I don't have time to divide white people into groups.
Well, here we are. If you listened to our ranking episode, you know that we're probably a little bit excited to talk about this sequel.
Yeah. That
I'll just call Farewell to the Flesh.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, there's also the discrepancy of is it a 2, or does it just go straight into the subtitle? Because at least within the body of the film itself, there's no 2 to be seen. Mm-hmm. But it's referred to with the number in place.
Yeah, if you have IMDb,
yeah,
it'll list the 2.
So where's that 2 coming from, is what I want to know, because it clearly wasn't part of the original design of the...
I don't know.
Is it just for categorization's sake?
Maybe.
So people don't say, oh, which movie in the series is this? And there's only 2. What's the worst that could happen? You end up accidentally watching Day of the Dead? Okay, I get that point. I've convinced myself.
Well, here we are. We are talking Farewell to the Flesh, the second movie in this series.
Yeah.
And it's a 1995 film with 21% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh,
I know, yeah.
Horror films, man.
The
critical community
underappreciated.
I mean, it's a blanket prejudice.
It's like every reviewer is Gene Siskel.
We all remember the movie Being Gene Siskel, with that scene where Gene Siskel with big boobs is lounging on a piano singing Siskel, Siskel, Siskel. Oh man, yeah, no, I just don't know where. Well, I know where those prejudices come from. Taste. Yeah, the idea of social and cultural taste. But my God, they're just missing out on some really interesting films.
Yeah, I don't know how you watch this movie and not at least find interesting ideas within it.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said,
that are worth watching. That literally make it a better movie than most horror sequels.
And it's also better than movies that try to have a message and try to say something important.
Yeah, right.
The fact that it sort of it kind of thinks as a horror movie does about these ideas means that it's never precious about it, and it's not trying to impress anyone with these ideas.
Yeah.
It's just saying that in this story, within the frame of this story, all of these historical ideas are present. Let's talk about them.
Yes. That's one of the things I love about the movie the most, is that these things are front and center to this movie, but the movie is not precious about it, and it doesn't feel self-important.
No, that's exactly the word I was looking for. Yeah. It's not. It doesn't have. It's not lofty about.
Yeah, right.
About it, like it's dealing with some really weighty ideas.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not weighed down by them because in the end of the time, it's a popcorn horror flick.
Yeah.
Or at least it can revert to that when it needs to.
It doesn't, it at least doesn't lose sight that that's what it's supposed to be.
No.
Yeah.
No, never. Yeah.
And as we previously discussed in our ranking episode, it is directed by Bill Condon.
Mm-hmm.
You might not know him, but you do know him because he has directed Gods and Monsters, Kinsey, Dreamgirls.
Oh, Dreamgirls.
Twilight. The Twilight Saga, I think it's called officially. Breaking Dawn Part 1. And then movies like The Fifth Estate and The Good Liar most recently. And he also directed Beauty and the Beast. The live version.
The one with people.
The one with people. The one with Hermione.
I believe that's how that genre is referred to. We're going to have to do that with every Disney movie. Ever.
Yes.
You know, Fox and the Hound. The one with people.
The one with people.
Not with foxes or hounds. There's just people in fox and hound suits.
And so Money Corner, a budget of $6 million for this movie, an opening weekend of $6 million. But in the USA and the world, $13.9 million. So it wasn't lighting the world on fire.
Yeah.
But
it was a good time to make this movie, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've got Silence of the Lambs, which elevated the horror genre. A year before this, or I guess concurrent with when this was being made, you've got Interview with the Vampire, which is another, and that was a kind of a literary adaptation as well as just as Silence of the Lambs was. So you're kind of, it's not box office poison to do an intellectual horror film anymore.
No, and I also feel like this movie drafts off of Interview with a Vampire in a way
so much.
Of that looking
set in
back
New Orleans
to the,
for one
yeah,
thing.
right, yeah,
and using the Gothic of New Orleans to kind of create the horror milieu
to set it off, yeah.
I wonder how much they were it was influenced by that. I wonder how much they were able to see of it before they started making this movie. It seems like a lot. Or maybe they were just in the same. That was where horror was at that time, and everyone was kind of independently having a lot of the same ideas.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Well, I had a good time as the the logos came up at first, because you got the original kind of MGM.
That's my first note, contemporaneous MGM logo.
Yeah.
And my specific note was, what's the difference between messing with it and just leaving it alone? Like, where is the call made to go full CGI lion? And the MGM Plus one is a CGI lion who then gets frantically pulled away for some reason.
Right.
What's that all about?
What's going on there?
It's just this lion. The lion almost goes, "Hey, no, I'm not done roaring," as he disappears.
Hey, where you guys going? Where's that camera? It's supposed to be right on me!
I made this studio with my rolls.
But then my next note is that the Gramercy logo comes up, and then I wrote, "Remember Gramercy?"
Well, I don't think we need two presenters for these episodes, because right now our notes are identical. I didn't write "Remember Gramercy," but I noted that it was such an elaborate logo for a virtually unknown company.
Right.
And originally, I thought it was just the SAG-AFTRA logo. It was
That's
just
what
sort of
I thought
saying
too. Yeah,
is that what you? So it's just like thinking, okay, you want? I assume everyone.
Okay, so there's actors in it, I guess.
Okay, they're all union. Great. I can relax.
That's the thing that gets me about that logo every time, with that sort of, that that bronze man with the
Yeah.
outstretched arms.
I thought that was it's quite pompous as logos go.
But then it's followed by the polygram logo, which
The wobbly polygram logo.
Yeah, which I also had faint memories of because I always, whenever I see the polygram logo, I always think it's going, because that red line comes across, and I always feel like it's like a Polaroid, and I just kind of want a photo to come out of that red line.
Should we be doing a spin-off podcast just about production logos? Because right now we've not talked about one frame of this movie, but we both independently had 3 separate notes just about the production logos. No, I had the same thing. It put me in my mid-90s VHS rental happy place when I saw the wobbly polygram logo. And it reminded me that I think Polygram were responsible for a lot of independent horror movies in the mid-90s. Because I believe the Polygram produced Shallow Grave, Danny Boyle's first movie. I remember seeing that on VHS, and I'm pretty sure that was Polygram.
Okay.
So it's obviously a platform for making interesting horror movies outside of the mainstream.
Yeah, I should remember because I rewatched Shallow Grave within the last year, but I don't. I'm sure I enjoyed it when I saw it.
I haven't seen it in years. I assume it holds up. I mean, it's just it's just
it does. Yeah, the movie itself does. Yeah,
it's Hitchcock with penises. Which, if Hitchcock had lived long enough, there would have been penises in his movies.
Well, now
let's talk about the movie.
Yeah, we're gonna have a cold open.
Imbass number 1.
Imbass number 1, and I gotta tell you,
in an imbass heavy opening.
Movie,
but especially opening.
I think this opening is handling all the shit that we see in sequels so deftly, and so well. My note was, I can't believe how well this supposed B-movie sequel is handling all of this, because in all of this, like, basically, first of all, at first I thought this was some sort of art show, like an art installation or something.
Yeah, it definitely gives that impression.
It felt more like that than a book tour, but it turns out it's a book tour. But in this first, we're gonna get a recap of the first movie.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna get out
the mythology.
We're going to get out the mythology. We're going to get out the city we're in. We're going to get out the city we used to be in the first movie.
Yeah.
You get so much information in this one tiny little cold open of the front of a movie. It was fantastic.
And it is fantastic, and it does such a good job of introducing characters that I assume, without having seen the first movie, are not in that movie. Yet it feels like we're continuing the story of characters from that movie, even though I assume we've never seen any of these characters before.
No, yeah.
But it doesn't feel like that, and that's that is the, if you can pull off that magic trick as a sequel where it seems like you're dealing with legacy characters, but they actually have their story, like, it's like it makes it the trick is to make it seem like the story is happening in media, like you're starting in media res. Which they kind of are,
sort of,
but they're giving us enough. They found this device by which they can, like, inventively give as much exposition as they want, and it never looks clunky,
right? Because
it's a monologue within the world of the film, and also it's not only inventive in the way that you've just described, but it's also speaking to the legacy of horror, because I think it's deliberate that they make it look like an art show, because it reminds me very much of Night Gallery. I don't know if you know Rod Serling's follow-up to Twilight Zone, which was I know of it, but I never really saw it. It was a portmanteau, and the each segment was linked by Rod Serling in a art gallery, and each story would begin with a painting that he would describe, and then you'd zoom into the painting and it would become a story, like a story. And that's what it reminded me, and I think they were speaking to that. with this use of the still painted images that that he's showing and linking together, and right up front, the movie is kind of self-aware that this is about affluent white people narrating Black history.
Yeah,
and
right.
having Purcell as the kind of narrator, as your kind of you're the first voiceover you hear. It's both. There's both an awareness of like, I'm a white person telling a Black person's story, but also this is America, right? This is like,
yeah, right.
We're not at a stage where African American people are allowed to narrate their own historical, narrate their own history, and that's then we go soon after, once the recap exposition is done, we go out into the audience, and you start to see Black people in the audience who seem less than impressed.
Yes.
So. And they start asking questions, and it's like just the act of this, I think, is a radical one in a movie.
Yeah,
because it's like saying, excuse me, I lived through this.
Yes, right.
This is not made up, okay? This is like, so it's like a right to reply from the people who you were excluding from the historical narrative, and that's all at play in this scene. In addition to it being just a really good way of dealing with the problem of exposition. And sequel storytelling.
I'm realizing now, because in our last episode as well, we started to doubt whether or not we would get in trouble because we're here on Zoom, and so we can see ourselves, but we don't think it should count. But I'm realizing that Purcell, he summons Candyman with the book, the jacket cover.
That's a very glossy cover, though.
It is, but it's not a mirror.
It's pretty much a mirror. It's as close as a book gets to a mirror.
So I'm saying I think we're in trouble. I don't think we can give our technology arguments.
Well, what that tells me is any reflective surface
is what works, yeah.
So you do it into your phone, do it into your iPad, you're in trouble.
Yeah, but back to your previous point, that's one of the things that I loved, is because Purcell is immediately, at least to me as the audience, as the viewer, is the unreliable narrator.
Sure.
Within the scope of this movie, he's going to tell these African Americans, these Black people, about their history.
Well, yeah.
And I love the idea of him being so unreliable as a narrator that he'll challenge the myth and the legend.
Yeah.
And of course, it spells his doom.
Yeah. Yeah, well, because he announces it, he revealed, or someone says that he's a Cambridge scholar. Oh, I think he says that he's a Cambridge scholar because, of course,
he seems like the kind of person that would say
that. Yeah.
I am a Cambridge scholar.
It's not even white American heritage; it's white British colonial heritage. So he's doubly the wrong person to be telling this story, to be writing a book about this. And I think what it announces to the viewer is, and I don't know, the impression I get from the first movie is that they didn't think through the ramifications of, for want of a better term, black on black violence, that Tony Todd with hair was kind of killing people who suffered the same fate he did, essentially, and just continuing a cycle of violence. Whereas here, there seems to be a shift to, let's focus this violence on the oppressor rather than the oppressed. Mm-hmm. And Purcell is the kind of the lighthouse for that.
Yeah,
shift.
Absolutely.
He's also one of the this is a less a less intellectual point, but he's also one of those men in the 90s who have secret ponytails, where you don't realize they have ponytails until you see them from a certain angle and go, oh shit, that guy's got a ponytail.
Yeah, when you do
that's
see it,
such a
think,
90s thing.
What's going on?
You're just like, why the fuck would that guy, it's like, I just thought he had slick back hair. No, it turns out he has a fucking ponytail. Why would he have that? What's the point of that? Like in The Guy in The Fugitive is another one.
Yes.
And I've seen, the Think Me Up a chocolate donut with some of those sprinkle stuff.
Some of those sprinkles on top.
Yeah. Because he's another one where I've seen that movie so many times, and every time I see it, I just think, You could just cut that ponytail off.
Right the fuck off.
And your hair would be normal.
I feel, whenever I see that, I feel like it comes in a time and a place where people are too influenced by Steven Seagal. This guy should not be your role model.
Oh.
Cut that thing.
Definitely. Yeah. and this is the beginning of, they've got to find a way, they've got to find a reason why people keep saying Tony Todd with hair's name 5 times into a mirror,
right?
Even though they know it's going to spell their immediate death. And so the gimmick here, and pretty much for the whole of the next movie, both movies,
right,
is that they're doing it as a dare to prove that he doesn't exist.
Right. So, but that's a repeated
so
refrain
hubris.
in all of these movies. It's always hubris. Yeah. It's always a person that says, "No, I don't believe the legend."
I guess there's no other reason why you do it, right?
I have to prove it to you.
Yeah.
the extent to which there's always one person that's always willing to say, "Well, why don't you prove it?"
Yeah.
And then another person that's willing to say, "Well, I'll go ahead and prove it," and then do it.
It gets very old very quickly.
A little bit.
I don't even know if I like the idea of the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like something that like a soap opera director would do. Like the Californians in SNL where they all
when they all
rush into mirror to get into the same shot. It's like, as a visual idea, it's a little bit crappy. I think
it's drafting off something else because isn't there? When I was a kid, I seem to recall you would go into the bathroom, look in the mirror, and say bloody murder 3 times.
Okay, yeah.
Isn't that
I think
a
it's
thing?
riffing on... There's also... I can think off the top of my head of at least more than one horror short story which involves sort of seeing dead people in mirrors. Yeah. So I think the idea of the mirror is ingrained. I just think it's such an albatross around the neck of this movie.
That's true.
Every visual idea has to involve a mirror. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, okay, I guess we're looking at mirrors for the rest of the film because that's so central to the mythology that you can't get around it. But if you had the choice, you wouldn't spend so much time looking in a mirror. It's like the last thing any director wants to do is to involve a mirror in their cinematography.
Get mirrors involved, right?
Yeah. So anyway... But yeah, I mean this whole opening, which again treats Purcell like a character that we know, and I didn't realize it here. I've been burnt before on this, of course, as we all know, with another 48 hours. But as the movie went on, I was like pretty sure if they're filming new flashbacks for these people, they weren't in the original. Is Purcell in the original movie?
No, I don't remember him. But
okay.
It's been. I remember rewatching that movie maybe within the last couple of years, but I still don't remember. It's funny, as Purcell's talking, and at one point, I think to this is why I like this portion of the movie, too, because I start thinking to myself, where are we? Because wasn't that first movie in Chicago? And then Purcell would say something like, right here in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And then I think to myself, why are we looking at that young guy who's looking hatefully at Purcell?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to know him? Isn't it just Virginia Madsen? Yeah. And then up comes a newspaper article with Virginia Madsen, and he explains roughly the legend that happened in Chicago.
But this movie still makes out that that they were secondary characters in that movie.
No, yeah, it has that feel.
It has the feel, but clearly that's an illusion that the movie's creating.
But I feel like this is a from scratch rebuild of the mythology with this whole new family.
With this whole new family, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I think it's taking the I guess the kind of the bones of the mythology and then building it out in a way that's more politically correct.
Yeah.
And radically, radically subversive in terms of its retelling of history is the way I see it. But then, I'd have to see that first movie to know what was here first and what did the sequel add.
And that's the one thing I just could not draw from my memory was the...
Well, the movie doesn't want you to remember because it would probably reflect badly on them if you did.
Because I guess I was even just trying to remember the actual mythology of Tony Todd's character And like, did we see flashbacks the way we do in these two
Right.
movies?
Exactly.
And I literally can't remember if we see flashbacks.
Well, and the flashbacks are different in
I know.
in
It's
each movie.
amazing to me that in the third movie they have a different flashback, and now it's at night.
Yeah.
And I guess
They can't even remember what time of day it was in the last movie. That says everything about the level of filmmaking.
so amazing.
Yeah.
I just thought, I guess you just couldn't get the rights because it is a new studio. We only have one real sad studio. In the next movie, but we'll get there.
I wonder how much they even remembered that flashback had already been filmed.
Yeah, I mean,
because they go into it as if it's the first time you've ever seen the audience.
Right,
Is the first time you've ever seen this.
Well, and then we get to see what Coleman Tarrant.
Mm-hmm.
And he's all upset and angry about his dad dying and saying that Purcell could have. He went to you for help, mister.
Yeah.
And he looks like the crazy, but you have at least enough background knowledge to know what's going on with that guy.
Well, it's another good...
He knows that the legend is real. It clearly happened to his dad. He's holding this guy responsible for some reason.
Well, it's another good expository device, right?
Mm-hmm.
Confronting someone, publicly in a bar, you've kind of got to say what you're confronting them about,
right?
To make your point. So it doesn't feel clunky at all because if you're haranguing them, you just wouldn't say, "And you know why I'm doing this. I'm not going to repeat it in front of you." You can, you can take a moment and go, "I hate you because of this and this and this."
Yeah.
I don't know how he finds his book amongst all that broken glass because the book looks like it's made of glass.
I know.
It's so shiny.
I took exception...
Were books that shiny in the 90s? I don't remember them being that shiny.
No, just his book. Just Purcell's book. But that also feels... That actually is organic. That's organic to the world because if you were writing a book about the legend of Tony Todd's, then you would... make the book look like a mirror.
You would? Like Spinal Tap's Black Album.
Exactly.
Yeah, the same thing. Which in itself is a mirror, or at least Nigel tries to salvage it by saying it's a mirror. None more black.
None more. But I did wonder if that bartender was the owner of the bar because he put that guy's head through a window right quick. I thought, you're going to have to stick around for the window guy to come around and fix that fucking thing tonight.
Well, it's a rough and ready town, and I guess they're trying to get that across.
Yeah.
As early as they can. And well, then we go from the bar fight into the restroom. Mm-hmm. Where it's made clear that the fear of Tony Todd with hair is kind of being... White people's fear of Tony Todd with hair seems to be lumped in with unfounded fears about black people in public places because he totally racially profiles a guy who's just in there to take a piss.
Right. That's so good.
And I just love that idea of like... There's sort of like you see a movie about like a black slasher, and then you go into a restroom and you see this black guy and you're just like, oh my god, he's gonna kill me, like that other black slasher I saw. It's like when Dr. Hibbert dresses up as Dracula and he's like, why does everyone think I'm Blackula? So, and then in addition to that, there's obviously like there's homophobic anxieties as well because he gets the hook impalement from behind, which is sort of like the fear of being raped and raped by another man in a public restroom as well. So all of that is kind of the choice of the restroom is this kind of, it brings out all these white male anxieties
and like angst. Yeah.
Fears of black men, fears of male rape, and confronting the prejudice head on because it's both confirming and denying those prejudices. It's sort of like, nope, you won't always be attacked by another black man just because it's just the two of you in a restroom. But if you've called Tony Todd with hair's name 5 times into a mirror-like surface, it's gonna happen anyway.
And then one of the things I noticed as this bathroom scene unfolds, is you see Bill Condon, and this is, I think, his first feature film. I can't. He's got maybe a couple other credits right before this.
It's a hard first
but
film.
It's fascinating that you see a person at the beginning of his career, but somebody with talent.
Definitely.
Because there are so many shots where you go, oh man, that looked really good, and then there are some shots where you're like, man, that's really close up. What's he doing?
Like Howard Ramis on Caddyshack looking through the wrong side of the camera.
One of those shots is Purcell with the black kid who ends up leaving the restroom, and then the door kind of shutters open, and there's Tony Todd kind of behind the door. That's Western a great style. Shot. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. It's really good.
It is. Yeah, it really is. And the movie hasn't even started yet because that's the end of the cold open.
Cold open, fancy font. We
got another production company, Propaganda Films, who didn't even have a logo at the beginning of the movie, which I don't know how you could call yourself Propaganda Films and you don't have a logo. I mean... But then my credit check might reveal about why they chose to put that at the end of the movie rather than the beginning.
Okay.
But we'll get there. Yeah, and then we're at Mardi Gras.
We are indeed. And up pops the voice we're going to be hearing an awful lot from.
DJ Kingfish.
Yeah.
And this is what you did in the early 90s. You used DJs to stitch together scenes in your movie. As heralded by Samuel L. Jackson in Do the Right Thing and through to Psycho 4, CCH Pounder and Psycho 4.
Sure.
And not just in film as well. You know, obviously this is the era of Frasier.
And I was going to say that I was going to make the Frasier comparison, and then this isn't exactly like it, but I also always think of The Warriors.
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely.
Yeah.
It was just, you know, FM radio was such a cultural phenomenon at the time that you could base whole movies around the idea of a DJ is telling you the story.
Mm-hmm.
And after, well, I guess it's that Halloween 6 which kind of effectively kills it with their not Howard Stern.
Yeah, right.
Character. You never really see it after that point.
That
was the death
over.
knell for the DJ linking the movie.
Yeah, that thing's played.
But you know, this is another. I wouldn't say it's more of a tired expository device because it's been like 5 years of movies that do nothing but this. But nonetheless, I mean, it works, doesn't it? Because you find out what the title means, why Mardi Gras in the movie, because Carnival means farewell to the flesh.
Yeah.
And, you know, thematically, and they make such a thing of reminding people in New Orleans what Mardi Gras is, which seems like is unnecessary if you live in New Orleans, but he goes over, you know, that it's like it's a pre-Lent kind of celebration before you kind of purge all your vices and immoralities.
Yeah.
During Lent, and you eat a lot, you fuck a lot, you drink a lot, you dance a lot, do all the things that you're not supposed to do once Lent has started. And that becomes the sort of central metaphor of the movie, that we're in this limbo between between sin and faith.
Yes.
Which becomes abundantly clear when Radio Raheem turns up as a preacher later on in the movie.
I know.
Speaking of Do the Right Thing.
Yeah, I was also going to say it has all of that, but also DJ Kingfish has kind of a tone that reminds me of Chief Wiggum P.I.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, when you see him, he looks a little bit like Chief Wiggum P.I.
Yeah.
Or that waiter on the mobility scooter who serves him
just
in the New Orleans
restaurant. Just kind of the way he's talking, the cadence of his voice. It sounds like, it sounds like the bad guy.
Will you stop saying that?
That's good stuff.
Yeah, it is.
So the next thing I know is that our heroine, Annie Tarrant, is driving to a school that she works at.
Right.
And she's clearly the clear, calm voice that all the kids will actually listen to.
Yeah.
maybe there's there's racial things going on where like the African American kids can't sit still, they can't do this, they can't behave until the white woman shows up. And
But that's how she sees herself as well, because once we get into the scene when she's called out of class so she can go
that's the weirdest part of it all to me, was the principal tells her, no, just go on, these kids will be fine without a teacher, they're almost always alone.
That's one of these things these kids understand, it's taking care of themselves. So we're already debunking the white savior complex that she clearly has about being a more than middle class white woman teaching in an inner city, mostly black school. And you see that when she's driving through the neighborhoods, you know, this sense of kind of this acute awareness of class and racial differences everywhere in this movie.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're also, and also the conversation they have in the classroom is really interesting. I happen to be reading a book about Watergate at the moment, and they talk a little bit about changes in education that were going on at the time, and pushes towards more radical revisionist history, and then the pushes against that to kind of suppress that. And it's interesting because this conversation reminds me a lot of that discussion about the discomfort that white people have about African Americans like reading the history of their own people.
Yeah, right.
So like, you know, they talk about Tony Todd with hair, he's a victim turned hero, and white people get really nervous about that, the idea that you could go from one to you can have that kind of social mobility as a black person.
Right.
Because there was a debate, well, not a debate because one side is right and the other side is wrong, but there was the idea of a debate around whether kids in 70s schools should be reading memoirs of Black Panthers. Black Panther leaders. And the argument was, you know, it's like, oh no, you know, they talk about participating in violence and crime, they glorify it. Go off and read this book about a generation of slave traders.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's like kind of like that hypocrisy there, but you can see that hypocrisy here too, because she's so challenging them on the idea. It's like, no, you can't worship this. It's like, you can't revere this guy. He's a monster. And they're saying, well, yeah, but we want to like learn about him and learn the lessons of it. And she's suppressing that, and the movie picks up on that. It's very interesting.
Pretty deft. Like, it's interesting.
Like, the conversation could have gone so many different ways. It could have been like a scene from Dangerous Minds, which is total.
Yeah, right.
Where the white savior complex is kind of affirmed, but this scene does the opposite, where it says that she doesn't understand what they need.
Yeah, right.
Throughout this scene. Not to say she's not doing a good job or that they don't need her, but she
right, there's connection there.
There's a cultural disconnect based on her race and her class and her economic standing. And
but I like the idea of her idea of herself and the movie's idea of her.
Yeah.
It's great.
I guess like with and that's right at the beginning with Purcell. His idea of what he is and what we believe about the wrong that he represents.
Yeah.
And just the act of having these kids in the school being able to kind of like talk back and say, no, that's not what's going on here.
Right.
That's a big deal.
Sure.
You don't get that back and forth a lot in like mainstream horror movies or any movie at this time.
Yeah. Now the next few sections are weird to me because the principal has said
they are.
The principal has said something about her brother, but she doesn't go to see her brother immediately. She goes to see her mother.
This is all very muddy.
And it's all muddy, exactly. And
then the husband is introduced without. So this movie,
that's the one for me too, because I did not know he was her husband. I thought he was a cop at first.
Yeah.
And then I saw him wearing Tevas, and I was like, oh, I don't think that guy's a cop. Who the fuck is this guy? And it wasn't even until the next scene when she kisses him, I'm like, oh my god, he's her husband.
And he's a chef out of nowhere.
Yeah, right.
he's not established as any of these things.
No.
In his first scene, which is weird for a movie that does such a good job with exposition up to this point, and then it just suddenly it just abandons them. Yeah.
Now let me ask you a question about the husband as well. He's Coleman, I think, and I want to say the actor is Michael Bergeron. Do you remember him from Thelma and Louise?
Ghostbusters. I remember him from Ghostbusters. He's the guy. He's just the guy who's leering on Sigourney Weaver with the.
He's the date with the
we're both miming nasal drops.
Yeah.
But who's the stiff.
He was the stiff.
Yeah.
So here's the interesting thing to me about this actor, because he's a great stiff in Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm.
He's an amazing, worst person who ever lived in Thelma and Louise.
Oh, he's the rapist, isn't he?
He's the rapist.
Yes, of course he is.
It's not. I don't think it's an easy thing for an actor.
No.
To be that villainous, and I remember in that movie, in the act of being caught, he says something like, "I should have gone ahead and fucked her."
Mm-hmm.
And Susan Sarandon says, "What did you say?" And he said, "I said suck my dick."
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets shot. He's such he plays lechery or stiffness so well.
Yeah.
And I found him kind of bumbling and odd as a loving husband.
Yeah.
I thought
it's very unclear, but that's the problem. It starts off on the wrong foot. You don't know who this guy is.
Yeah.
And it's like the movie hasn't figured out who they want him to be either.
It's weird. I almost thought he was playing him as mentally challenged in some scenes. He's tripping over boxes and has to sit down and be told to calm down. I almost thought she'd take out a juice box and give it to him.
You did really well today.
You did really good.
You didn't complain once.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but this is again creating the illusion that this is a story in media res, that we've somehow been following this story all along. When this is all new information. Some of that kind of gets caught in the crossfire, and I think the husband is a great example of leaning too much on the idea that we know these characters. Sometimes you forget to introduce new characters because But I mean, all the stuff with Veronica Cartwright, I think is, again, the agenda of the film is really clear. This idea of old rich white people setting themselves up as vain alcoholics who shut themselves away in ivory towers.
Absolutely.
Almost as if they know that the call for reparations is coming, and they need to lower the drawbridge and put up the fortifications. So so the people who come the people who come demanding reparations from families of slave traders can be kept out. I mean, the alarm, it becomes a plot point, but the alarm system is so prominent.
Exactly, right, yeah.
And it works thematically as well, because it's just want to make sure no one demanding reparations gets in before I leave.
All right, well, we're about to go have mom and daughter go visit brother at the police station. Why don't we take a break and we'll come right back?
Yeah, and I'll just say that this was the behavior of the mother in this scene. I was just I'm with Candyman.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm with him, as it were.
He's not wrong.
No, he's really not wrong. He's punishing all the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll just lastly say there's a moment where the daughter, they go visit. I'll save it. It's coming up.
Okay.
I'll save it. I'll keep it. We'll save those little nuggets.
Right now, Tony Tudwith hasn't put a foot wrong yet.
Nope.
Let's just say that.
On that note, we'll take a break and come right back, everybody.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beers. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here talking Hanahan 2, Farewell to the Flesh, directed by Bill Condon.
Don't know why that's so funny, but that's like the funniest bit you've ever done. And in many ways, it's the most simple. And that says something about comedy in general.
Always aim to please.
It's that and Dial of Destiny's CGI person. That's the two comic bits I think of when I think of you now. CGI person I don't think will ever be bettered.
Okay. I'm going to keep trying.
Also, never seen that guy in a movie before or since.
Not before or after. Yeah.
I'm convinced that it's not even a joke and he might literally
he might actually
be made of pixels.
Well, as previously stated, they're going to go to the police department. And so there's something interesting that I'm only realizing now because, what's his name? Detective Ray. I have this note about Detective Ray bringing up Class Battle.
Yeah.
In this
the Country
scene.
Club Pissant. That's the scene.
Country Club Pissant. And I didn't realize until just now that both these movies, this one to a lesser extent, have cops that have access to grind.
Yeah.
You know, they got problems. One's a very virulent racist in the next movie.
Yeah. And it's, the gender, racial, class diversity in the central cop partnership, which I think still, and I mean, obviously you've got on TV, you've got a little bit of that with NYPD Blue, but for movies, I mean, that's to do it with a man and a woman, I think is the big difference as well. Like that hasn't really been tried. And they sort of, and unlike the next movie where they're shunted out of the way by two very white men, they kind of stick with this partnership for most of the movie. There's one stakeout where she's not there, but I think they did that for plot reasons because she needs to survive. But it is interesting, like, whoa, this is a literal melting pot that I'm seeing in front of me, even in the establishment characters.
Yeah, right.
Which partly New Orleans and its racial diversity, but it's also progressive casting. Sure. And characterization.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everything you're saying about, so like it made me think of a Carol Clover quote about horror movies where, and I'm paraphrasing, but she basically says horror movies treat society like an open wound. Mm-hmm. And this movie, I think, really speaks to that. Like, it's like an infection inside all the fault lines of, like, all the class, economic, and racial fault lines in American society. Yeah. The movie is like an infection within all of those wounds.
Absolutely. Right.
It gets into them and exploits them. And I think that's what horror movies do in general, but this movie does it self-consciously, explicitly, and with a political purpose.
And well, I think, yeah.
And very well, yeah. Oh, I mean, the handling of issues without them ever feeling like issues.
Yeah.
Like it feels like
that's the trick.
Well, this is reality as we know it, or we should know it.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to peel back the curtain a little bit, and something, the most minor event will cause a ripple effect, and you'll see all of these fault lines.
See it all over, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what's happening here because of his disdain for the guy's class, and it's another example of that.
And then, well, my next note is that we kind of already talked about this, but my note was, Annie's with the cook, who I thought was a lawyer.
Yeah.
But
there's no sense that they're together.
Yeah, and then my next note is
until they start fucking each other.
He's the husband.
But even in the scene where he's revealed to be the chef, I think the chef owner of this restaurant, which by the way never comes up again.
Never.
In the entire movie.
Doesn't matter.
Never comes up in the movie. Or he's just a guy who like, I don't know, got some food spilt on him and the chef gave him his whites to kind of... And he was just like, you just having an espresso. But it's interesting, and this is where it kind of reminds me of like Bram Stoker's Dracula, An Interview with a Vampire, in those early 90s movies. There's a focus on the romantic side of things as well. Right. And it's interesting, I think the first line of this movie is he died for love. Mm-hmm. And so there's almost a sense to kind of follow in the tradition of what's been done to your Draculas and your vampires, where they've been kind of turned into the heroes of romantic melodrama rather than...
Yeah, I think that's what's different about this and other slashers, is it leans into the mysticism and the mythology of, those kind of former...
Yeah.
The Frankensteins, the Draculas, the tragedy of a wolf man, that kind of thing. That's
within the legacy. We talked about this when we talked about Twilight, which of course Bill Condon also directed an installment of. But Gothic, the roots of Gothic fiction are as much romance novels as they are horror novels or science fiction novels. So following that path is not. It's unlike Megalopolis, Francis Ford Coppola was onto something. And it's interesting that these movies play up the romance, both between the monster and the heroine, and between the heroine and the other love interests in her life.
Sure.
In both movies, I think.
Yeah.
Less successfully in the next one, but
yes.
Yeah, and once we get more Tony Todd with hair, I have more to say about that, but we're not quite there yet.
In my mind, we start to get muddy again, because I don't know who the fuck Annie is, because now she's sitting in front of what looks like a self-portrait, and I'm like, oh, so she's a painter? Who is this person? Is she a part-time teacher and a part-time painter, a full-time teacher and a part-time painter?
I think they do say that she's an art teacher.
That's true, okay.
Whenever you say art teacher in a movie, you read frustrated artist. Artists who can't make a living selling their paintings. Sadly. But this gets to my other kind of major beef about the movie, is that it's so jump scare heavy. Mm-hmm. Like, it's so easy to overplay your hand with this technique, and if you do jump scares, you have to deliver on them eventually, and for a long time in this movie
doesn't for a long time.
It's jump scare reset for most of the movie, and I think that's part of the sort of, that's a sign of the times in some sense, but it's lazy filmmaking.
It's lazy filmmaking, period. But it also is unfocused, because there's that moment she says, "I'm drawn to the house," and this is the house that she grew up in, so they go to that house. But it's abandoned.
Great house, by the way.
Great house, yeah. But it's abandoned. They like the manner in which her husband Coleman is walking around this house. He's like a frightened child. He looks like he has diminished capacity.
So interesting you say
he is scared out of everything, and then all of a sudden there's jump scare. Boo! Scary bum.
Yeah.
But he's not scared of the scary bum at all.
Scary bum. No.
He just says, "Oh, hi, sorry."
once again, we wrote the same note in using different words, because I pretty much said exactly the same thing. Like, I'm not sure what the message of this interaction with the homeless guys is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because it contradicts itself. It makes them seem scary, and then blames Peter for being paranoid. It's like, which is it, guys?
Yeah.
Are these guys scary, or is he being
Or
paranoid?
not.
You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
And then, because they're like, he looks out and those guys are eyeing up his car.
Yes. He turns on the alarm.
Yeah.
He's like, come on, guys. He's such
But
a child.
maybe it's...
There's
yeah.
that moment where he's like, come on, guys, get away from it.
I mean, maybe that's another debunking moment. It's sort of like you identify with his kind of fears of being around,
People of color.
Because
Two of those bums are people of color.
But it's more a fear of, the underclass that's going on. But then it's immediately debunked because they don't seem to be any threat to anyone.
Yeah. And Annie, by the way, is finding sort of a shrine to up in the attic.
The classic shrine. And I thought, just representationally, the fact that not all the bums were African American. There was that sort of perverse optimism of Clinton's America. It's like,
right.
There are not the problem. The problem now isn't the vast divisions of black and white. It's that everyone's poor.
Yeah.
So that's so we can reconcile racial problems. It's just that everyone has to be poor to do it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what happened. But what I love is that we're mixing these traditional artworks of the period in which came from.
Yeah.
With graffiti art to tell the story. So it's kind of classic and contemporary at the same time, and that's a real advantage of New Orleans, because New Orleans feels that way as well. It feels dynamic and modern, but also very old at the same time.
Right.
So it's actually the perfect place to set your horror movie, as Interview with the Vampire also showed the year before.
True, right. Hey,
And
in this movie, is Tony Todd with hair an artist? Do they say that, or is that just an invention of the third movie?
When I saw it in the third movie, I assumed they'd said it some point in this movie, but now you're mentioning it, I don't think they do.
I don't remember it.
He painted pictures of her, though. Right?
In the third movie, though.
Only in the third movie? That's a big change.
I think so, but
Well...
It's very strange that I can't remember it, because I watched this movie yesterday, but...
Well, the other problem with that is the paintings that they muck up for the next movie is so terrible that it's basically saying he's a very bad artist. He's Hitler.
I felt the same about Annie's portrait of what appears to be herself in this movie.
Yeah. Well, she's an art teacher for a reason.
Yeah, her husband's like, it's coming along, and she goes, yeah, it's just something missing. I'm like...
Yeah,
might be a lot missing.
He's there like looking at like a box of rat poison, thinking it's salt, and about to poison everyone in the restaurant, like Robert De Niro in that Stanley and Iris. Whew, know where that came from.
Jane,
you know that one.
Jane,
Fonda? But he's
I'm gonna say 93.
He's an illiterate school cook.
Yeah,
remember that? Yeah. And she finds out because he like she says some salt and he gives him rat poison. Don't look up the year. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
You know me so well.
You thought 83. I think you're right.
Oh, it's 90.
No,
I said 93.
Stanley and Iris is a 90s movie?
Yeah.
Oh.
I thought it was later. 1990.
So I can't believe that's a contemporary of this movie. That doesn't seem right. And well, this makes this movie look even more innovative.
Mm-hmm.
My next note is about the music, so if you want to have a nap, that's fine.
Okay, I'll go to sleep.
So, do you know anything about Philip Glass, the composer of...
I recognize the name.
Yeah, so he's kind of a minimalist composer.
Okay.
And in my ignorance, the way I see minimalist soundtracks is that he picks 4 notes and then plays combinations of them throughout the movie.
Okay.
But interestingly, like, he could pick any 3 or 4 notes he wants for a score. Why the exact notes of the Bond theme? It's unbelievable. It's like it's the Bond theme, and it just and because it's
59, really, truly.
But that's it. Like Philip Glass, because it's minimalist. All it is the Bond theme over and over and over again. So, and I'm really surprised. Like, you set your movie in New Orleans, you have what presumably is a jazz DJ of a jazz station narrating your movie, and you go with minimal modernist composer Philip Glass, the antithesis of jazz.
That's the other thing about DJ Kingfish is that, you know, the first time we hear him, I think I have this right, like she's driving to school. So you presume he's on the radio.
Sounds right.
But then all of a sudden he just is popping up here and there, and there's nobody necessarily listening to the radio. It's like that part of it is kind of uneven within the movie.
We know he thinks he's a radio DJ, but we don't know if he actually is. Yeah, it's very interesting. And when they go back to the school,
she's breaking up fights.
Yeah, she's breaking up the fights, and this is
she's challenged.
Yeah, once again,
right.
But it's also like it's dipping its toes in the water of a kind of Dangerous Minds style white savior teacher in the inner city predominantly black school, but it's not doing that in a patronizing way. It's sort of like it's playing with the imagery of it without confirming the bias of it almost.
Okay, yeah. Because
of what you say about everyone gets a right to reply to what the white people say in this movie, which is unusual even now for
It is unusual. But I'm also kind of focused on, because what do you think of this idea? I mean, we've already kind of talked about it, but in these movies, somebody's going to say, well, if you don't believe it, then go ahead and say the word 5 times in the mirror, and then somebody has to say, it's not true, so I'll go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
But it's already happened once in this movie, and then we saw that guy got killed. So can you bring any kind of dramatic tension to continually showing this to an audience? That's the corner I think these movies paint themselves into.
Yeah, you need to. It can't be too hard to find another reason
to bring him out or about.
Why someone would do that
why.
even accidentally. That's what I assumed was going to happen. Is lots of people would accidentally say it 5 times in conversation and then realize they've done it.
That'd be amazing, actually, if she doesn't know.
They kind of do it in the next film a little bit, but I don't think they realize they did it.
Yeah. I agree. Well, and then something happens in this movie that I love that we'll get to later.
I think the ending.
Yeah, I love
so
that's ending.
That's what I want to see throughout the movie. Them having set up that cliche that they continually that they play with it and they deconstruct it.
They have to deconstruct it in some way. What would be better is, instead of the kids explaining the legend to her, if she sees the word somehow, some way, she brings it up, she's staring at the mirror, and she's, like you said, either absent-mindedly or whatever, saying the words over and over, and then you go...
Candyman. Candyman.
Yeah. But you could build tension with the kids, shots of the kids reacting to each other as she gets from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, being afraid to say anything, whatever it is. And that 5th one comes out. You know, there's got to be ways to kind of reconstruct it in a way that it can be dramatically interesting that they never go for in these movies. It's weird.
They don't. And another way that they're hamstrung is, I think they want to make it too much like Dracula. The sense that you consent, you summon Tony Todd with hair rather than you accidentally invoke them. Like that intentionality, I think, comes from the the sort of vampire mythology of you have to invite the vampire inside.
Right, exactly.
So they're leaning into that.
But all of that is muddy in this movie too, because you can say the words that summon him, but then he'll kill someone else that's in the room and not you.
Right, because you don't desire him like you do Dracula. I mean, the point of it's the hypocrisy of I actually want him to come in and ravage me.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't the sense that anyone wants to do that with Tony Todd with hair. It's still an accident, so why not play it off as an accident rather than I'll prove to you that he's not real by invoking him and showing you that he doesn't come. Every time.
The other thing that I think is muddy in this movie is that Tony Todd is summoned by a host of people, and then some are murdered immediately within 30 seconds, but some are...
Other times he waits for his moment,
Yeah, exactly.
He takes his time, yeah.
So what...
It's a little inconsistent.
There's not a good, clear set of rules, and then on top of it...
That's true.
With these family members... Clearly, there's something that he's always saying about you have to choose to come to me and choose death. But what about that? I don't understand that completely. No. That to me is muddy as well. That's not well explained. And it's the only way you can get these movies to 95 minutes.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, these heroines should be dying in the first half hour of the film when they say the words.
Yeah, you need a Tom McLaughlin to come in and start a rule book.
Yeah,
I felt that too, and I think that's where this is deficient as a horror movie, because it's not on top of its mythology as it needs to be.
Right.
And like you say, I mean, again, it's where sometimes the progressiveness of the content rubs up against the use of horror conventions, because there is something satirical about the fact that it's basically the African American people in the movie going, don't do it.
Yeah,
it's a bad idea. And the white people won't listen, and they do it just to prove a point, to prove that they're right, because they're so convinced they're right.
Yeah. Nobody will kill me. I'm white.
And that's part of the political commentary of the movie, but as you say, it drains it of all dramatic tension.
Yeah.
Because there's no suspense in there, there's no surprise, there's no no danger to it. It's a foregone conclusion. But politically, it's another very sophisticated take on white people's behavior, white privilege behavior, which again is ahead of we only started saying this, like mainstream media only started kind of coming up with this conception of white behavior through like the Karens and things in like the last 5-10 years, but it's all here.
It's all been there all along, right? And even on film, right
at a time when you're in a period of prosperity with a president who is progressive, and it might be an unpopular time to make a movie like this which reveals all the fault lines of that. But the movie's going ahead and showing it to you anyway, and going, "Hey, this is all built on shaky foundations. It could crumble at any time."
Right.
And I think that's fascinating.
It's interesting,
especially after the week we've had.
I'll say
about how quickly it can all crumble. But also another kind of movie that's being made a lot of at this time. I think it's kind of colloquially referred to as the yuppie nightmare. Movie, like the Fatal Attractions,
consenting adults, that kind of stuff.
consenting adults. You put me back at the Polygram logo and what you just said. Put me back in that VHS hat rental happy place when you said consenting adults. I'll be like, what are those two consenting adults doing on the cover of that VHS? Yeah. It's not quite. I think it's deliberately ambiguous so a kid doesn't see it. Video store manager hitting me with a broom. Get away from the erotic thriller section. Get away. But the thing that really drove that this belonged to that subgenre home to me was the frosted glass cubes in the apartment, I think if you see one of those in a movie, you're in a Yuppie Nightmare movie.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a Yuppie Nightmare movie that doesn't have one of those frosted glass cubes in someone's apartment.
Well, and we're about at that, that sort of residential neighborhood nightmare part of the movie, because
Pacific Heights.
Pacific Heights, excellent. The husband and wife are going to have sex, and out comes Tony Todd as the husband Coleman comes up with his snacks and wine, and he's going to get murdered.
Yeah. Well, this is Tony Todd with Hare's not first appearance, but one of his first appearances in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird to see him with hair. You don't see him with hair often. So it's already a distinctive look. And just, the face and the voice.
Oh, great.
They're so iconic.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that, Michael and Jason have masks. Freddy's face is burnt. He's got this claws. Man, ain't got nothing.
Yeah.
It's just Tony Todd.
I'm just an African American man who's gonna fucking gut you.
It's Tony Todd, hair, and a voice.
Yeah.
That's it. And this is where, to me, I was like, okay, the lineage of this is not Jason, Michael, or Leatherface, or Freddy.
Mm-hmm.
It's Christopher Lee's Dracula.
Mm.
It's the idea of, he's basically handsome and human, but he can turn monstrous, when his bee-filled wounds open up. Okay, now he's a monster.
Right.
But up until
then,
he's just a regular guy, his Christopher Lee's entrance in his first Dracula movie, where, you're expecting this kind of Nosferatu-style entrance, and he just walks down the stairs like a normal person. It's incredible. But you've got the same here, where you're like that. It's just Tony Todd with
just
hair.
Him. He's got a bloody hook, but that's it.
Because all they did with Christopher Lee's Dracula, it was like they had the close-up of him with red eyes, and that was as monstrous as he got. The rest of the time, he was just a tall, handsome, aristocratic guy. But this, to me, one of the most radical moments of filmmaking in this film, full of them, is when when he attacks.
Yeah.
That footage is intercut with him being killed.
Attacked. Right.
Him
You're
being
starting
tortured
to see
and
the
murdered.
flashbacks of the mythology.
Yeah. So I mean, and like you were saying, there's other aspects of this movie where it we default to something that is kind of now seen as politically incorrect, like the big black man preying on the small white woman, like it's
right.
That's like Birth of a Nation
Sure.
until now. But just that act of editing where him attacking is simultaneous with him being attacked.
Right.
It's a different kind of morality.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, did we talk about this with, I think a little in Freddy versus Jason, that, Jason has this tragic backstory, so you can default to sympathy with him sometimes.
Right.
You can't
You
do
don't
that
have
with
that
Freddy.
with Freddy, yeah.
Or Michael.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Michael, because, he came from a happy home.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit of it with Jason occasionally when they decide they want to see him as a small boy covered in toxic waste.
Yeah.
Or covered in fungus that can be removed with toxic waste, or whatever they decided it was in the end. But here, it's very, very deliberate, very distinctive. It's like, you can't judge him for anything he's doing, because look what happened to him.
Look what happened to him.
And what happened to him represented is a historical injustice that is yet to be addressed.
And we're not there yet, because these are just sort of flashes of flashback.
Yeah.
We're not to the true story yet. But, what happened to him was so evil that even the Karens, the woman and the child, are like the most disgusting people involved in the whole thing.
Yes.
But we'll get there.
Definitely, yeah. And it's so pointed. And I think that's a revolutionary act of editing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Boy, that police station is beautiful. I don't know if it's a real police station, but
it's really nice.
It made looking like if it is a real police station in New Orleans, I wouldn't mind ending up there. And given that New Orleans is a party town, you could end up there quite as and the cops are pretty known for brutality as well.
If you got yourself some purple drink and jaywalked and ended up there for an hour till you got bailed out, be like, all right.
Yeah.
They keep putting a brother and sister in that really nice interrogation room. A lot of space.
Well, all of it. I mean, the Gothic columns and windows.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is like a heritage home.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a National Trust house I'd want to visit if I was in the UK.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my next note is that basically up until this point, the idea of Christianity or Jesus is kind of nowhere to be found in the movie, and then it comes in hot.
Big time.
Because we got Jesus on a cross passing the car.
Yeah.
And, part of me was like, is this part of Mardi Gras tradition? Is it like towards the end of Mardi Gras all the Lent people start to parade around? I don't know. Maybe it is. I mean, New Orleans is the traditions of Mardi Gras are fucking weird. There's the whole thing with the guys the black people who culturally appropriate Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just for fun. But with a kind of like a commitment and respect where you're like, fair play. You go ahead and culturally appropriate those Native Americans. I'm not sure the Native Americans are saying the same thing. I
don't feel comfortable telling you shouldn't do that.
Yeah. Exactly. So there's some weird shit going on in Mardi Gras, but
plus we're about to be introduced to Bill Nunn.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought Carnival was sans holiness.
Mm-hmm.
So does Jesus just start walking across the street to go?
I admit that
I
too have those questions. Yeah, exactly. I don't have enough knowledge.
Partying done. You got till Wednesday.
Don't have enough knowledge about Mardi Gras to talk confidently about it. I did notice that because DJ Kingfish comes back in, and I started to notice that when we're hearing from DJ Kingfish, we also seem to be getting like clips from the opening montage credit scenes of The Wire. That's what it's starting to feel like to me.
It's so true. You're absolutely right. And another David Simon show, Treme, which is actually set in New Orleans. I mean, there's a lot of and mostly I think it's like it picks up around Mardi Gras every year for in each season. So, yeah.
Well, Annie goes to see Bill Nunn because he's the father of what's the kid's name? Matthew. He's going to
Matthew.
To see Matthew. I noticed that.
So religion coming in hot. There's
big time.
We gotta. Matthew. He was one of the disciples, right? Am I right in thinking that he was one of the 12?
That sounds right. I know it's a biblical
Simon
name.
Peter.
Where?
Dopey, sneezy, lechery, gluttony, Zebedee. Got it. Yeah. Well, Matthew's definitely one of the Gospels.
All right.
Matthew definitely wrote one of the Gospels, so I'm assuming he's the disciple. It's been a long time. I did religious studies at school.
Really?
To find out what I didn't want to know about. You got to eliminate that early.
Yeah,
read the Bibles like, not interested. There are better books out there.
Thanks.
I'll just read I'll read Middlemarch instead. This is more my speed.
Yeah. Well, I have a note here that Bill Nunn shows Annie Matthews what he calls his studio, which looks more like a Tony Todd torture room to me.
Right, and
I think to myself, that dad should have a firmer hand as a priest and a father on this boy's room. Get that shit down. Oh yeah,
completely,
Matthew.
And this changes the the pun intended stakes of the movie because it turns it into like a vampiric confrontation because he essentially becomes the Van Helsing to Tony Todd with Hair's Dracula, which is a kind of eye moisture. It's what Who's the Stiff uses in it. It's called Dracula.
Dracula?
Cleans your nose. Yeah, so it's sort of up until this point. Well, I know you. I mean, the representation of Hung Hung is very, very much is very vampiric and specifically Bram Stoker-ish.
Sure.
But having this, it kind of now it's about religion versus the undead in a way that the movie wasn't really about that up until now.
Right.
And I wonder where that's coming from. Is it just the popularity of vampire films and books at this time, or why
I
it
mean,
was represent? Because the movie to me it's about
it could be as simple as
black
the
people
Anne Rice
versus white people.
Yeah. It could be as simple as the Anne Rice of it all, just kind of drawing on the vampire lore. Like, it's popular at the time is what I mean.
Yeah, I think that could be part of it. It's also we talked about there, and I'm realizing more and more talking to you that there's a lot of muddiness in these movies.
Yeah,
and maybe this is what, like, having an antagonist, having a kind of protagonist antagonist who kind of, they're both African American. One represents morality, the other represents amorality, and I think that does an injustice to the complexity of the movie a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And in a sense, it doesn't matter because it goes nowhere, and he doesn't really become Van Helsing. He's more of a bystander, and maybe just like
he's a full bystander the whole time. He's not
an expert. Like he's more of the expert. Like he can, the kind of trope of the character in a horror movie who gives you information, about the mythology. Yeah. Who is Van Helsing too?
Because he tells her about it's him that tells her about Candyman's lover and her mirror.
Yeah,
and all that, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this is when we start to get into.
Oh no, wait! I think Thibodeau tells her about that. That's who it is. The snowball.
Oh yeah,
machine. The snowball shop guy.
Totally forgot about him.
That's Matt Clark. He's that actor that you know that you don't know. One of those actors. You're like, I know that guy, but you can't ever remember his name.
Well, that's the part of the movie where I'm like, maybe this is what you were referring to with The Wire. It's like, is this just a documentary about New Orleans now? It's like, so it's got these local characters, some of whom don't look like actors.
Yeah, because the woman he's talking to feels like just somebody they found on the street.
Yeah. Well, even his performance is slightly... It's got that non-actory feel.
Yeah,
I think it's
that's true.
Maybe he's...
If I didn't know he was an actor, I would think he wasn't an actor.
Supporting artist plus is what I describe him.
Absolutely. But this is a fairly good... This kind of reminds me of other horror movie moments, and that's one thing in which... Well, I certainly think this movie does it better than the next movie, because these movies have to judge how long... Once you get cops involved, you have to judge how long the cops don't believe you when you say it's a ghost coming back to haunt people and kill people.
Yeah.
It's not me, Your Honor, it's the ghost. And
it was a Percocet.
Yeah, it's always a very tricky line about how long you can let that go. And so this is the scene in which one cop partner, for some reason, he has a whole different partner in this scene.
Yeah, well,
instead
for
of the
plot
woman.
reasons, I think, because she would have died too if that happened. If she was there. Also, like, Don't Be a Menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood told us these movies can't have strong black women in them.
Yeah, right.
You know these movies can't have... Where you going, Ma?
Yeah.
You know these movies can't have strong black women in them.
But it's interesting that this cop, the one cop, is following her because, she's the rich white woman, and he doesn't trust rich white women. They've been suppressing poor cops like him their whole lives, kind of a thing. And so he's following her to the snowball shop. She gets that exposition that she needs, and that the audience needs as well. Still, I don't think they ever mentioned that he's a painter. But this is where you get, I think you get full flashback, don't you?
How would they have worked that in? Yes, it is. Oh, and by the way, those brush strokes, Transcendent. He had a way with the brush.
Yeah.
That's what it says here, anyway. Seems weird to mention in this document, but that's what it says.
Good
Yeah,
stuff.
no, but these are the flashbacks. This is where I realized that these characters weren't in the last movie, because I was like, oh, okay, if they're filming new flashbacks, then because they would just use footage from the first movie if they. So that was why I realized that. Oh, okay. They've just retrofitted these characters to make it look like it's a continuation of the original storyline. So, but also something interesting here, and I'm not saying I don't like it, but at what point does Hanuman start using bees like the bats in Batman?
Yeah, it's here.
Commanding swarms of bees.
He commands the bees to attack Thibodeau.
He's Bee-Man, essentially, right?
So Thibodeau gets it.
Christopher Nolan's watching going, oh, that's a good idea.
That's excellent. Ooh, I like that.
And tell its story out of order. Excellent.
What are you going to do? Send the dogs or the bees? Or the dogs with bees in their mouths? And when they bite you, they shoot bees at you?
Yeah, I didn't hear Tony Todd with hair once saying, a bee bit my bottom, now my bottom is big.
Well, I'll tell you what does get big is Thibodeau's face when he gets the bees launched at him, and then Candyman throws him through the wall, right? And his head goes outside and the cop sees it. That's good stuff.
And again, it's like, obviously, the Michael Keaton Batman doesn't command bats around like Christian Bale's Batman does, right?
No, but Christian Bale also has like a sonar thing in his boot that helps with the bring in the bats.
Well, of course, because everything exists in empirical reality in those movies. Like Batman himself does. But it does make him seem more like a superhero, right? If he's sort of like, with his superpower as bee, he can command a swarm of bees, and makes him again more heroic than slashers are normally allowed to be.
True, but he also tells Annie that she's pregnant with a child.
Yeah, this is where the kids start.
But this seems like it's supposed to be important, but the movie's not clear on why or how. It's like, well, we're pretty late in the game to find out that the baby she's having is important to Candyman somehow. Sorry. But previously it was just her that was important.
Well, I thought about it way more cynically than that. I thought they just had to have a child so they get another movie. They get another movie out of it,
which is what they do. Right.
Yeah, they're just leaving the door open for a sequel by add children. So I thought about it way more cynically than that, but yeah, it seems like it should be a bigger deal, or it should be, I don't know, like he's reborn through her or something.
Mm-hmm.
Something where there was kind of stakes to it.
Yeah.
I mean, just gonna sing callous, but you know, if she dies with the baby in her, that's good for the baby, because then what's the baby gonna do without a mother?
Mm-hmm.
So once again, I feel as if Tony Todd with hair is vindicated entirely in his choices.
Well, also
I have no notes. No notes, Candyman, no notes.
Good so far. And he also, right after this, he kills the Rage Cop, the Rage Class Warfare Cop, because he comes back in.
Class Warfare. Sergeant Class Warfare.
Yeah, he comes back in to attack Andy's brother in the third incarnation of the interrogation room. Yeah, I like, because earlier in the movie, the brother threw something, that like an ashtray or something, through the two-way mirror, and then they have wood up where that's supposed to be, but there's still enough mirror for him to pick him up, start choking him out, and then say 5 times, and then he gets, and this is the part I like, because this is when the movie, because the partner looks at the video, and so the partner gets on Annie's side because she sees her partner being lifted up and thrown out the window. Plus, when Candyman throws him out the window and there's that close-up of him landing on the desk in front of somebody who's out of focus in the background, but it's like completely surprised. That's a sublime shot. I fucking loved it. So good.
Yeah, some really good stuff here. Yeah, it's sort of, we get the shower scene coming up as well, which
that's right before it. Yeah, she's
notably restrained for what a shower scene could be and is in the next movie.
Yeah,
I suppose that's a bath scene, but that's only because they wanted her tits to come out of the water. So this is sort of like it, and it strikes you. It's like, what another slasher would have made out of that moment compared to this.
Exactly.
It's like the restraint, which I guess is there any nudity in... I'm going to answer my own question. Is there any nudity in Silence of the Lambs apart from the mangina, of course, moment? But
from the other than the tucking, I don't think so.
Oh no, but she's dead. There is female nudity, but she's blue.
Oh, she's dead. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But again, it's sort of like it's not just tits, it's dead tits.
Yeah.
With purpose. So, anyway.
Well, if you listen to the other podcast, if you listen to the How Dare You podcast, we talk a lot about dead tits. Like, why do we got to see dead tits so often?
Yeah, definitely.
Without purpose.
Yes. Well, I would argue, I don't even know if Silence of the Lambs had the right to do it.
Well, I tell you what. On the dead tit note, why don't we take one last break and come back?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. We'll do that. You listen to this, and we'll come right back. Right after this. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. We're back. Tom and I are finishing up. What's this movie called? Farewell to the Flesh?
Yes, Farewell to the Flesh. Carnival.
Farewell to the Flesh.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So, I found my note about the cop's death, which I said was a really good sequence until the stop motion started. And this is one of those points where I was like, the themes are much better than the style. Sometimes. So, otherwise, very good sequence.
All right.
And then, so we get some helpful ADR, which tells us that this family is Candyman's descendants.
Right. And
the
then there actually earlier in the movie, there's that moment when they're visiting the sort of torn down house, and they look out onto the hill. It's an odd shot because it doesn't seem to match the landscape of where they were when they drove up. But she says those were the slave quarters.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And I remember being shocked by that. I was like, oh God, slave quarters. Why wasn't that torn down so long ago?
I think we know why.
Yeah.
Hello, 2024.
Right. But then also, Mom has got those sort of just loose pictures in a drawer with one key that she keeps right on top of that drawer in a little cubby keepsake. Very easy for the daughter to get into, but that holds the clue that she needs to figure everything out.
Yeah, and it's kind of like it's one of those interesting moments where the way that the characters see themselves and not the way that we see it as the audience, because they sort of portray it as they're ashamed of being the descendants of a serial killer.
Right. This is where the movie
clearly
got
it's
super
about,
interesting to me.
It's about miscegenation and mixed race children that they're ashamed. They're ashamed of not being a racially plural lineage.
That's when I got super fascinated in the movie, because Miss Cartwright is just... It's a great acting tour from her. She's great performance.
Definitely.
And them playing off of each other. And actually, I have to go back to my notes. What's the name of the woman? Kelly Rowan.
Annie?
Who plays Kelly Rowan, who plays Annie. She's quite good in this movie.
She's really good.
Yeah. It makes all the difference when
which you find out in the next movie.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
But this exchange between mom and daughter, and the mom professing that what she doesn't want to be known is the fact that we had a serial killer, when the daughter is saying kind of outright, no, it's more than that. You're whitewashing. You don't want...
Yeah.
You know, you owe something to him. You owe something. You know, she's saying what we have been saying as audience members, that Tony Todd has been right all along. He's completely just in doing what he's doing.
I mean, it's essentially, once you find out what is actually going on, all we've got is like a former slave going back to the plantation to settle the score.
Mm-hmm.
There's moral high ground there, and only one person's got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the alarm system finally pays off. It's sort of like we've seen it being used conservatively 8 times before by the mother. And now it's like this has got to pay off at some point, and it finally does.
And it does.
But thematically, I like it too, obviously, because they're sealing themselves in from the outside world.
From the outside world, and the cops come. Actually, the black officer finds her on the stairwell and lets her go, because she's seen the videotape, even though she knows that's fantastical and maybe it's hard to prove. I kind of like the idea of the black woman letting the white woman go despite what she knows. There was something interesting within
Definitely,
that.
it's all there, yeah. Those like, and a lot of it is unsaid and is behavioral, but it's observed.
Yeah.
So going back to the cop's death, the other thing that I thought was interesting about it is it was the one decent mirror variation, because they took advantage of the idea it's a two-way mirror.
Yeah.
So he's saying it into the mirror because he's showing the person on the other side of the mirror.
Yeah, right.
What's going on. So they kind of use the idea of an interrogation room. So it isn't just, mirror after mirror after mirror. There's a two-way mirror. Slightly better.
And this is the moment where she gets the full flashback of the cutting off the arm and the slathering the honey on.
That sounds delicious when you say it like that. I'd love to have something slathered in honey. You said that That was like reading a menu, the way you said it then.
Well, that's what the kid and the
monkfish comes slathered in honey.
That's what the kid and the Karen seem to really enjoy, like the relish with which.
Oh yeah.
They're watching this happen to a man. His arm is cut off with the rusty blade of a saw. But I think the kid gets some honey on his cheek and tastes it, and he starts saying, sweet. Sweet for the sweet, or whatever.
Sweet for the sweet, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because first of all, Candyman is no sneaky Michael Myers, because he admits what his greatest weakness is. He says, "This is how you get me," basically. But I mean, again, the act of I think you were speaking to this before, again, with the intercutting of him being attacked while he's attacking, but now just kind of having to bear witness to his torture and murder.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's telling the story in his own words.
Yeah.
Nobody is telling the story for him. He is narrating his own story. These are the big swings that make this a
better
very
movie.
Interesting movie. Yeah. A very, very interesting movie.
And then...
And this is where I also wondered, is this sequence, or is any element of this sequence in the original movie, did they make the honey mirror connections? Like, are they working backward from bees?
I don't know, yeah.
And mirrors? And then kind of... So is it like that they slapping on the backstory of, well, it's bees because of honey, and it's
right.
the mirror because he was shown the mirror?
Yeah.
Or is this all invented here? Interesting question, I guess. We'll have to answer it for our Behind the Paywall.
There you go.
Get your answers by giving us money.
Hopefully we're given answers that we can relay to you.
We're like Quora, that service where you can submit questions. And all you have to do is subscribe.
That's all you got to do.
Yeah.
But also... You know, all of this is taking place in the slave quarters that she had referenced earlier. And then, did you have a moment? Because there's a moment where I started thinking about Katrina. Because it's as though the levees break in the middle of the storm into this slave quarters where she's...
Kingfish talks about the flooding as well.
Yeah.
He says farewell to the flood. Mm-hmm. Farewell, right after he says farewell to the flesh, he says farewell to the flooding as well. So yeah, I mean, it's something else that I remember from Treme, which is easily my favorite David Simon TV show.
Yeah, you've said that before.
There's a scene with the what's his name? Country. I don't know why I'm asking you. Like country musician Steve Earle. Okay. Playing like a character with playing like a songwriter within the world, and he plays a song to this young songwriter and says, "Well, okay, who's learning how to write songs for the first time?" And she says, "Okay, well, what do you think this song's about?" And she's like, "Well, this is about Katrina." And then he's like, "This was written 100 years ago." Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. It's like, this is not the first flood that.
Yeah. Right.
That New Orleans has had, nor is it the first time that the flood has had massive socio-economic repercussions.
Of course.
So I think, the specter of Katrina's definitely there because it's a movie that's honest about the socio-economic racial fault lines that New Orleans represents as a city.
Sure.
Yeah, and another thing that's remarkable is that, we watch his tears. Mm-hmm. In the present day, we watch him cry, and it just turns the idea of a slasher in on itself, right? All he is this historical force trying to restore the balance of justice, and I don't think have we seen that before or since, where it's just like it's just historical agency is the monster. I can't think of any other. Like, the slashers are also self-interested.
Yeah, right.
He represents something far bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, Charles Bronson in Death Wish, like he's not in the right way, but he's like, Dirty Harry, he's like an idea of something political.
More akin to that, yeah.
But vengeance for not the wrong reasons, but the wrong reason to become a...
Yeah, but it's interesting...
I know your feelings about Death Wish, so I don't need to.
Death Wish 2.
Yeah, you rather like Death Wish.
Yeah.
The original recipe Death Wish, yeah.
It's good.
Did Michael Winner direct that too?
I don't know.
I think he did.
Okay.
It's interesting. When I was doing my horror movie thon in October, I watched Ken Russell's Gothic. Mm. And any Ken Russell movie after about 1980, it's like watching a movie that Michael Winner made, but Michael Winner suddenly became talented. Because it's the same odd, esoteric, old British man choices. but done with with creativity behind them instead of
Creativity?
pure cynicism and showmanship. Anyway, that's off the point. Well, maybe not.
Oh, how often? We hardly ever do that. We can have this one.
A rare digression from me. I think you'll agree. Yeah, and I think like we've played with the idea that our monster is essentially our hero, but I think it becomes abundantly clear here because
Yeah.
why is she destroying the monster? To prevent justice being meted on her privileged family?
Yeah, right.
What right does she have to do that?
It's the only fatal flaw to this movie is that she succeeds in getting rid of him.
Right, but I mean that's how the story goes,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's sort of like, but the movie doesn't say you have to enjoy it. It's just sort of saying that it's like history kind of repeating itself, and
There's also a weird thing in these movies. This is another part of the muddled nature of the villain, because whenever he appears, it's sort of dreamlike,
yes,
and our heroines are always kind of dozing off into like a sleepy comatose thing, like they're under a spell.
Little bit sleepy time killer.
Little bit. And they always have to wake up out of it and then do something proactive. In this movie, she has to grab the mirror and break it.
Yeah.
But it's never clear what exactly is going on as he's entrancing her. Kind of like a Dracula, come to me moment.
But you're right. And they also use the dreamlike quality in a lazy way, because it's like a jump scare, where you have dream kills in the movie, where
Yeah, right.
real world kills would be better, or real world scares would be better. It's just another fake out.
But something I mentioned in our ranking episode was the dreamlike state or quality when it's supposed to be that mythical kind of mystical framing for our villain. It's done way better in this movie. The next movie, it's like he's standing there and he's kind of in profile and there's actual smoke coming behind him. And I think to myself, this looks like it's just happening. Like, it's not dreamlike. It's not.
Well,
it's just what's happening.
That's weirdly where I started to warm up to Day of the Dead.
Interesting.
Because I think the only moment that I prefer is when they make in that movie they make a practical choice, where this movie makes a full on CGI choice.
Yeah, well,
and it's really bad. The breaking, the digital shattering,
the digital
of the mirror
breaking,
is,
it's not good. Because once,
it's
for
really
those
bad.
listening, she breaks the mirror, which essentially breaks him, and it's. What's another one? I'm trying to remember right now. There's another movie like that, except it's rays of light coming out.
Young Sherlock Holmes.
I can picture somebody kind of writhing.
Young Sherlock Holmes?
No. Oh, maybe I might even just be thinking about The Matrix.
Okay.
When Agent Smith kind of splits, that kind of thing.
7?
No.
Okay. Johnny Mnemonic.
You're thinking Free Jack.
Always. Yeah, it doesn't work visually.
No, yeah.
and they sort of.
It feels like they ran out of money. That's what it looks like.
But the problem is that they've investing so much in this. I mean, the visual idea of mirrors in general.
Yeah.
But also, it's going to be the kind of effects centerpiece of your movie.
Right.
And it just looks terrible. I mean, even at the time, I don't think this would have looked good, would it?
No, yeah, no.
I think it's a failure even with the technology they had.
Of the time.
I think you could still make this look better with your Dire Straits video computer MTV
right.
music video computer money for nothing computer graphics.
Call the people from Max Headroom. Maybe they could have helped you
He just
out.
turns. Tony Todd just turns into a Minecraft character for a second. But, I mean, there is, at least on the surface, and that's the great thing about horror movies, what happens on the surface doesn't necessarily need to be what you leave with.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a message of integrative optimism, right? It's sort of saying that this next generation are going to solve our problems.
Got like a helicopter buzzing over.
Oh, well, there you go.
What's going
Bonus
Coming
sound
for me.
effects. Finally. Yeah, this has all been one elaborate sting operation. It's taken
on? You've been
nearly
luring
5
me
years.
in for 4 years.
We want it. Yeah, that was it. That my supervisor said to me, I think he's comfortable in the closet. We can. I'm like, no. Give him another year. He's not comfortable enough in this closet yet. He's still complaining about flip-flops blocking his comfort level. So
Earlier today, you were saying, I think he really trusts me. I think he believes this is real.
He doesn't suspect a thing. Swarm, swarm, swarm. A lot of bees just attack you outside. Yeah, so there is that. There's optimism. There's all these images of, the priest kind of blessing them. It's kind of like the end of The Exorcist, but again, the end of The Exorcist is somewhat ambiguous, even though it seems to be affirmative.
Well, and you have the DJ again. DJ Kingfish is saying, "I hope you said farewell to the flesh."
Yeah,
in voiceover.
That's right. And then
time jump.
Not a flesh forward, but a flash forward.
Right.
Yeah. So, we're clearly opening the door for a sequel here.
Yeah.
By ending with this child.
This is one of my
sequel stock and trade.
This is one of the things that really, in the last few seconds, this movie made me love it even more.
Yeah.
Because there's always the final scare.
Mm-hmm.
But the final scare, this is a take on the final scare that's different than any other horror movie I've ever seen.
It's funny, too.
And I got to give full props to it. It's great.
Putting a hand over her mouth just before she says it, I think is...
Before she says it for the 5th time. Because
it's a
what you
comedic
expect...
inversion.
Yeah, what you expect is a hook going through a mirror, something in that vein. Is that what happens in the next movie? It's got to be close to what happens in the next movie, doesn't it?
Sure. Yeah.
So that's what you expect. The sort of Freddy Krueger hand coming
dragging
through the
Jason
door,
to hell for a whole movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And this movie, it's a jump scare, but it's not your villain coming back. It's your mom.
It's an aborted jump scare.
Yeah, exactly. So it's such a good, clever button for the film. I love it.
It is. I agree. It's definitely a high point to end on. My only suggested rewrite is she nearly said the name 5 times because she was singing the song from Willy Wonka. I'm sure they couldn't get the rights to that, but and she just did 5. That's another way in which this could happen. You just like, I don't know how many verses there are of the song, but you probably say the name at least 5 times in the song.
Love it.
Well, you say it 2 in each chorus, so you'd get to 5 easy.
Not bad.
Yeah, really, really, really strong ending, and they certainly. Yeah, it's interesting. I was going to say earlier that is this because Scream is 96?
Yeah.
And this seems like, apart from this moment, this is a pretty sort of straight down the middle kind of movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not. I mean, it's complex, but it's not jokey or self-aware necessarily.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting that, a year later, it would have been probably made it very different. The tone would have been very different, probably.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's all I got.
Me too. You got a credit check?
Oh, boy, do I.
You're excited.
Hold your horses. This will explain the next 15 minutes that's on your timer. as you listen to this episode. First of all, Thug number 2 is credited before Thug number 1 because alphabetical order.
Excellent.
Why use numbers if you know that they're going to be out of order because you're crediting alphabetically? What does it matter? So here's an interesting character name. Suspicious Man at Matthew's House. How is this going to mean anything on this actor's resume outside of this film? That doesn't tell you anything about the character that's been played. Here's another great character description. Scraggly Vagrant. Which I feel is an overly descriptive credit. Sounds like something Dickens would come up with. It's a very Victorian description of a character, I find.
I feel like I should have been sent up for that.
you missed out on... You call your agent. It's like, why didn't you put me up for Scraggly Vagrant?
I could have killed as a scraggly vagrant.
They only wanted the idea of a scraggly vagrant. They wanted the Hollywood version of Nat. Tony Todd is the last build. Because, again, alphabetical order.
Wow.
So
nobody beyond the T?
Surely, no.
No
Surely
Williams?
this should be the first... There's no Williams, no. No Wendell. No Zebediah.
No Zebediah?
Surely this should be the first sign that alphabetical order is not going to work.
Yeah, right?
If it relegates
Tony Todd to the last
titular character to the last name, yeah. The music in this in the final credits reminded me of what Eddie Izzard said about how you know you're in an upmarket horror movie because it contains a child's choir solo. That's exactly what we get here.
That's good.
Key grip, Michael J. Fahey.
Oh, I really thought you were going to say Michael J. Fox. I got like he was moonlighting.
But best boy grip, Kevin Fahey. So again, crew relatives.
Hey, there you go.
Then there's a random series of additional credits thrown at the screen at once, including Bird Wrangler and their assistants. Each of you assistants take a wing. I'll control the head. Okay, so there's so much going on with this next credit. First of all, why is this credit here at all? First assistant accountant. But do you know what the name of this person is or what they're calling themselves?
No, but it sounds like a credit from today and not from 1995.
Yeah, I know. The Erminator.
Oh, okay.
That person's an accountant going around calling themselves the Erminator.
The Erminator. Wow.
And you know what the next name is after that?
I do not.
Jane Page. So, clearly, someone didn't get the memo that we're not using our nicknames. That the assistant, the first, second, and third assistant accountants should be using their real names.
I wonder how many times Jane Page had to call HR about working next to the Erminator.
Yeah. I just feel like it devalues our profession. Here's a very suspicious credit. Payroll services by All Payments Payroll Services. I feel like it's suspicious to mention all payments in the name of your company. No, all payments were made. All payments. Definitely all payments. That's what the name of the company is. All payments.
Right in the fucking title.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we call ourselves. Of course we paid you all.
Yeah, that's like saying, we didn't burn him.
Yeah, we paid all of you all that you were owed.
Why are you telling us that so definitively?
Because that's what happened.
Speaking of crew relatives, multiple Trappenbergs and Van Dykes throughout the credits. So I think there are lots of relative parent-child combinations working on this movie. Because it's a family movie.
Were any of them tripping over and on sofa cushions?
Only in the first couple of seasons. Then in later seasons, he notices it and walks around it. Since you brought it up, I feel justified to say, is there anything better than the Dick Van Dyke Show?
Ah, delightful.
I don't think I still to this day don't think it gets credit for how great a sitcom it is.
Mm-hmm.
Where am I? Grip equipment provided by Black Sheep Grip Company. Why would you call yourself Black Sheep? That's like saying we're are the worst in our business. Yeah. We're the black sheep of the Grip equipment family.
There's at least a 40% chance we show up.
This is an actual credit. Big Cheese Michael Kuhn. Now, I assume this is an in-joke.
That one I saw. That one I remember.
Who this is and why this is.
Yeah. Please tell me.
So this is great. There's a note about animals not being mistreated, which contains no institutional stamp, no PETA, no AHA, just vague language signifying nothing. It's along the lines of, we did our best to not hurt the animals. But no one was watching over us making sure we didn't hurt the animals. Don't put that in there if you haven't got a PETA or an AHA.
I knew you would have that note. I loved that when I saw that.
That's great. I mean, just don't mention it. Don't draw attention to yourself if you haven't got PETA or AHA approval.
Let me tell you something. I promise you, no animals were harmed. Just so you know.
And the amount of fucking animals in this movie. I mean, how many bees? Thousands, surely.
Yeah, there's fucking bees everywhere. You're telling me somebody didn't get stung and went koosh?
Yeah, so bees were definitely harmed in the making of this movie. And then finally, the Propaganda Films logo makes an appearance at the very end of the movie.
Yep.
And I'm not surprised they didn't put it at the beginning because it looks like it's advertising the Soviet Union.
It does. That's my note.
I know the wall has fallen by 95, but are we still not a little fragile about the idea of promoting art from the Soviet Union? Anyway, that is the unbelievably... That is the end of this probably the longest credit check I've ever done.
That's a lot for 95.
It's a lot for 95, but there's so many interesting credits there.
Yeah, it was good.
I kept saying, "Oh no, this must be the last one. This must be the last one," but it just kept on going.
That tree's bearing fruit.
It got to the point where I was like, oh yeah, this is too much. And then the thing about the animals took place. I was like, well, I can't. What kind of credit checker would I be if I don't mention that they allude to treating animals they allude to not mistreating animals with no supporting evidence that they did.
Oh, that's it then.
Yeah.
All in all, this is a pretty darn good little movie, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely it's brain food.
Yeah, I was delighted by this movie. I really enjoyed it.
It's good, popular brain food, which I that's why I appreciate love the Planet of the Apes movies. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
And it's a kind of similar, it reminds me of some of those ape sequels, like I think Conquest.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Conquest? Yeah. Conquest is the civil rights movie, right?
I think so.
A similar feel where they've taken what is quite like a Victorian Gothic style of story and made it modern in its outlook and challenging in its content.
Mm-hmm.
Very impressed.
Excellent. Me too. Well,
so it would beat Species in a fight, I think.
Mm-hmm.
As those two characters said.
I haven't watched Species in a while.
No, I haven't either. Frank Mancuso Jr.
Mm-hmm. I remember it being a movie I was really excited for and disappointed in a little bit. I think because I elevated it in my, my whatever preview mind's eye before I saw it. But it's probably better than I thought the first time I saw it.
Is Ben Kingsley in that film?
Yeah, he is. Alfred Molina.
Holy moly.
Yeah. Michael Madsen, too, I think.
How many Marvel villains can you fit in one, played by British actors in one movie? Wow.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, all that's left is for you to tell us what you think of this film. So, you know what to do. Find us on Facebook. Find us on Instagram. Don't find us on X, but go ahead and start a thread. Or you can send an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. That's it. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. When you hear us next, we're talking 3, Day of the Dead. Say goodbye to everybody, Tom.
Naked, blind, and covered in our own shit.
Excellent.
Which, coincidentally, is how I watched this movie.
And you hadn't seen it before. It's mere coincidence.
I was just like, hey, they're talking about me. I did the Leonardo DiCaprio point at the TV screen from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
There you go.
Covered in shit. Naked.
As God intended.
And I'm not blind, but the amount of shit on me forced my eyes closed.
Excellent.
Which is why I was blind.
This is why I was blind, of course.
Just gonna keep explaining the joke.
Thanks a lot, everyone. We'll be back.
Candy done.